The prophetess knelt under the golden rays of dawn in a quiet meadow, her hands resting on an ancient scroll bound in emerald threads. She had prayed for hours, asking for understanding and guidance. Finally, the scroll began to glow, and a voice, gentle yet commanding, spoke, "Open it, and I will show you a vision of a story that mirrors my truth." With trembling hands, she unfurled the scroll, and the world around her transformed. She was no longer in the meadow. Instead, she stood in a land of bright cities and shadowy forests, where the people's hearts were torn between light and darkness. The vision began with two figures, Alphaba, a young woman with emerald green skin, and Glinda, a golden-haired enchantress. They were friends once, but the paths they chose had separated them. "They call me wicked," Alphaba whispered, her voice breaking, "but they don't see the truth. I only sought justice for the oppressed, and now they've turned me into a villain to hide their lies." Glinda hesitated. Her glittering gown reflected the sunlight, but in her heart, a shadow stirred. "I want to believe you," she said softly, "but I've built my life around the light. If I stand with you, will I lose everything?" The prophetess watched as their words hung in the air like unspoken prayers. She saw Alphaba's pain and Glinda's hesitation, and she recognized the greater conflict at play. "Lord," the prophetess asked, "why do they struggle so?" "Because all have sinned and fall short of my glory," the voice replied. "But I have not abandoned them. Redemption is coming." The scene shifted. A great and terrible figure appeared, the Wizard of Oz. He stood on a high throne, surrounded by machinery and smoke, his voice booming across the land. "I am the source of truth," he declared. "All who oppose me are enemies of the light." Alphaba's green fists clenched. "Your light blinds people to the truth. You twist their hearts to serve your power. You call me wicked, but it is you who enslaves them." The prophetess gasped as she saw the wizard's deception for what it was, a false light meant to distract people from the true light of the world. "Lord, who will deliver them from this darkness?" The voice replied, "Watch, for even in their despair, I am at work." Alphaba fled to the forests, her heart heavy with rejection. There she met a man named Fiyero, whose heart burned with compassion. He saw beyond her green skin and her defiance, recognizing her desire for justice. "Alphaba," he said, "you can't fight this alone. But even your strength won't be enough to fix this broken world." "Then what can?" she asked, her voice trembling. Fiyero smiled sadly. "The one who created it. Only his light can overcome the darkness. You've been searching for justice, but what you need is grace." The prophetess saw Alphaba fall to her knees, voice, tears streaming down her face. "Grace? How could grace ever be for me? Grace is for all who turn to me," the voice echoed, filling the forest. "Even the wicked can be made new through my son." Meanwhile, Glinda stood in the wizard's grand city, her heart torn. The people praised her as good and righteous, yet she felt empty inside. The glittering towers and joyful songs of the city could not drown out the truth that Alphaba had spoken. "Lord," Glinda whispered, in the quiet of her chambers, "am I truly good, or am I just as lost as those I claim to help?" The voice answered, "There is no one good, not one. But my son is the light of the world. If you trust in him, you will see the truth, and the truth will set you free." Glinda wept, realizing that her goodness had been a facade. She knelt and prayed, surrendering her pride and her fear to the true light. The final vision brought the prophetess to a great gathering. Alphaba, Glinda, Fiyero, and countless others stood before a radiant figure cloaked in light, brighter than the sun. His presence filled the air with peace and power, and the prophetess fell to her knees in awe. "Who is this, Lord?" she asked, her voice trembling. "This is my son, Jesus Christ," the voice replied, "the true King of all lands, including Oz. Through him, the wicked are redeemed, the lost are found, and the broken are made whole." Alphaba looked at the radiant figure. "Even me?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Jesus extended his hand. "Especially you." Glinda, once radiant with worldly light, now glowed with the true light of grace. She knelt beside Alphaba, taking her hand. Together, they sang praises to the king who had redeemed them both. The vision faded, and the prophetess found herself back in the meadow. The scroll in her hands was now inscribed with words she hadn't seen before. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost. Luke 19:10. She rose and whispered a prayer of thanksgiving. Thank you, Lord, for showing me that no one is too wicked to be redeemed, and no light is true unless it comes from your Son. May this story lead others to you. The wind carried her words, and the emerald light of the scroll dimmed, but its truth would shine forever.